a big part of what you talk about is something that we love to talk about as well, just in disease overall, is lymphatic drainage. Is this, overlooked side, I think, of everything that is
Yeah.
detox and organs of elimination. Everyone knows the liver. When you drink, your liver gets impacted, and your kidneys because you're excreting things, your GI in some ways because, of course, you're excreting. But that unsung hero is the lymphatic system. And a big part of what
Oh, big
you
time.
do with Stop Chasing Pain is look at the lymphatic system and lymphatic drainage. What led you to that realization? Meaning you went past the biochemical kind of physical look of pain and you started looking at many different systems. It's all intertwined, it's all together. But what was it that brought you to the lymphatic system?
Almost dying and wanting to kill myself. And I'm not kidding you.
Hmm.
I reached a form of rock bottom where I was in the abyss. I was below the abyss where I just couldn't get out. And I needed to find a different way of looking at my body and looking at the healing, and then really stopping and asking, okay, what in the world is my body trying to tell me here with what's going on? Right. And a big part of that was inflammation, right? And I think before I get into my story, it's really important for people to understand that you need inflammation. Like if you didn't have inflammation, you would die way sooner. Trust me, because that kills stuff that's trying to kill you. But unfortunately, sometimes that inflammation switch turns on and it doesn't get turned off or turned down.
Mm.
And then everything becomes an inflamed hot mess because inflammation is an immune system response, not a musculoskeletal one. So that's a big one that people need to understand. So when you get a boo-boo or your knee hurts, it's not musculoskeletal inflammation. That's immune system. So that was a big one for me of like, oh, I've been looking at the musculoskeletal system and I've been looking at the nervous system. Let me look a little bit more at the immune system. And then you realize, holy cow, they all talk to each other. Right.
Yeah.
And so I said, I've got all this inflammation in the body. So why is my body having a hard time getting rid of it? And why is it going and overproducing the inflammation? First of all, the answer is protection. Right. And then I said, okay, well, what's part of inflammation? Well, the lymphatic system, its main job is to get rid of inflammation in the body and things that are trying to kill you. But I never looked at the lymphatic system in my journey up to that point because I didn't think, well, I don't have cancer. Why do I need to look at the lymphatic system? Because that's usually when you'll hear about the lymph system, because cancer can spread through the lymphatic system, and people have had lymph nodes removed, especially when they've had breast cancer. That's a big part of what they do. But you also need to, when you learn that the lymphatic system kills cancer cells every day, so you don't get cancer. That's a big part of its job, right? And then I don't have lymphedema, and lymphedema is where you have a problem with your lymphatic system where it doesn't work as well or is compromised. And then body parts become abnormally swollen compared to another one where you have a leg that really swells up. But I didn't have any of those. So I'm like, I don't have a lymph problem, right? Unbeknownst to me, I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I was dealing with, but I didn't realize it at the time until I went back to basics of, okay, let me just try to understand inflammation and the lymphatic system. And I was starting to study, let me go back to fundamentals of what cells need in order to heal, recover, and generate. I said, I'm going to wipe the slate clean, forget all this muck that's been instilled in my brain from education, and start from Sesame Street level. Okay, like C-spot run. I have a cell here. If I can figure out how one cell works, I could probably figure out how the other trillion work because it's the same basic mechanism. And I said, okay, well, cells need nutrients and oxygen, a lot of it, right? So you get that through breathing and you get that through food that you eat. I'm like, okay, well, once you have the food and once you have the oxygen, how does it get to the cell? Well, that's blood flow, right? So blood flow is a huge thing for me because if stuff doesn't get to the cell, you're not getting better. Hard stop, period. That's it. And then, okay, if it gets to the cell because I get good blood flow, The cell uses the nutrients and the oxygen, and that creates energy, so it can heal itself, or it can make new, more resilient, stronger cells that adapt to the stress of life. So you become more of a hashtag beast mode monster human being. Right? But when you make energy, what do you make? You make waste. Right? And then how does the waste get out of your body was the next question. Well, it gets out through the bloodstream again, just a different part of it, through the veins. So blood flow once again. But then it's the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is the primary system that gets rid of waste in the body, and it kills a lot of stuff that gets into the body that's trying to kill you. It kills viruses, bacteria, parasites, toxins, cancer cells, and you pretty much name it, right? And its main job is to get rid of excess proteins in the body, because you don't want proteins floating around in the body, because that's going to make you an inflamed hot mess. And it's going to get rid of metabolic cellular waste, which is basically cell poop, and long-chain fatty acids. Gets rid of those. And so that's getting that toxic stuff out. So it takes it out. Here's kind of cool. It takes it out and puts it into the vascular system, into the veins. So then it can go out into the other arteries again. So it can go to your liver, it can go to your lungs, so it can go to your colon. So you can breathe it out, you can sweat it out, you can pee it out, you can poop it out. So all these things, I realize that most of your organs are designed to get rid of muck, what's I call muck, waste. I said, oh my goodness, what would happen if something happened to the waste management system of your body and it was compromised and couldn't get out? If it can't get out, you're going to die within 2 days, period. But what if it is maybe working at only 50% capacity? You might not feel it right away, but you'll feel it after 5, 10 years, right? Because it hits an overload and overburden. And then why are you going to get inflammation? Well, because you're living in your own toxicity of waste, right? And then if they can't get out, then your body's going to say, that stuff's not supposed to be here. We got to kill it. And what's the number one way it tries to kill it? It starts with IN and ends with inflammation, right? So then you become inflamed because you can't get rid of things. And it's just this vicious cycle that happens. And I realized for me and for most people, I was busy trying to put all the nutrients in and the oxygen in, and that's the diet, that's the breathing exercises, all the stuff on the front end. But if you don't clear the back end first, you're gonna make yourself worse. You're not gonna get better. Because I realized that, hey, even good food also turns into waste.
Yep.
Just like bad food. I mean, I'd rather eat good food than bad food. That's a good step up the ladder of healing, but it all goes to the same place. And I realized, holy cow, that's my issue. And all these areas that I was touching on in my body, I was just working fascia and muscle. I never thought to myself, I wonder how this is influencing my lymphatic system and my blood flow system. I was not thinking that. Even though, here's the thing, even though I was already influencing them, I didn't realize to what extent, if at all, until I had somebody say, I think I know what your problem is. I think you have a lymphatic system issue. And I went, lymph what? What are you talking about? And they subsequently checked the primary areas of my body where you have lymph nodes that gather, that can swell up. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that later. Every single one of them hurt just as much as the last one, particularly the ones in my neck. And I kid you not, but within 3 days after that, I felt about 40 to 50% better than I did within the last 3 years. And I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here. Yep. And then that was the ticket where I knew that I was going to go down this road and dedicate my life towards understanding it. And it was right there in front of me the whole time. I just didn't see it yet. And then when you see it and you understand it, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And then now it made sense. I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that makes complete sense. I look at my face and my body, and I look, now that I know what to look for, I look like a big, giant, swollen walking lymph node everywhere. And then I had developed about 3 individual cases of cellulitis, very painful infection of the body. And I'm like, okay, why in the heck am I getting that? You're not supposed to get that, first of all, and you get 3 times. Well, then I realized one of the biggest causes of cellulitis is that you have a lymphatic system that's overburdened and you're living in toxic waste, and then you get an infection. There you go. Right. And now when I put those puzzle pieces together and I started to work the system, then the dominoes began to fall. And now I connect that system to all the other systems of the body so people can see. In my viewpoint here, everybody has a lymphatic system issue. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah. It's interesting because my father started off conventional medicine before he got into integrative medicine, and he was an anesthesiologist, and he worked his way up to be chief of pain services. And after all the years of, just doing the drugs, the steroids, the surgeries, he had enough, and he started searching in the 80s and 90s for other things. But he looks back on that time and people ask, well, what'd you take out of that? And he says, if you know anything about pain, it's not what you put into the body that'll ever treat it. It's what you take out. And that's not surgery. He's saying that was the toxins and the waste that was basically not able to get out. So you could give as much as you want in pills and everything else until you stimulate that lymphatic and especially the organs of elimination. You have a terrible biological terrain that's going to cause inflammation, all sorts of autoimmune disorders and everything else that goes along with that as well. Rheumatoid arthritis, and it goes usually into the connective tissue and around the areas. And then you have inflammation and pain, and people say, why do you have pain? Take painkillers, do this and that, when in reality, you are correct. They should be looking at the lymphatic system and getting rid of things, taking it out of the body.